Imagine a world where the most powerful man is also the most hated. He's feared by his rivals, and even his closest friends plot against him. This is the story of Julius Caesar, the great general and statesman whose name became synonymous with power and who died believing he was invincible. Welcome to my channel, and today we'll be answering the question, who was Julius Caesar? You want to know more about one of history's greatest leaders? Then stay tuned until the end. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss any of our uploads. Julius Caesar, Roman general and statesman, is one of the most legendary figures in human history. His life and legacy have been studied for centuries, and his achievements and failures continue to inspire awe and wonder. But who was Julius Caesar really? Let's explore his life story to find out. Caesar was born in 100 BC into an old and respected Roman patrician family. Despite not being related to the first two Caesars, Augustus and Nero, he took the name Julius Caesar as part of a long-standing family tradition. Caesar's early life is shrouded in mystery, but it's believed that he received a traditional Roman education and was tutored in subjects such as rhetoric, literature, and philosophy. Little is known about his childhood, but it is thought that he was sent to live with relatives in different parts of Italy, while his father was away on military campaigns. During this time, he would have been exposed to the political and social customs of Roman society, and would have learned the skills necessary to succeed in the highly competitive world of Roman politics. When Caesar was just 16 years old, his father passed away, leaving Caesar and his brother Gaius to manage their family's estates and property. In 89 BC, Caesar married Cornelia, the daughter of a prominent Roman senator, which helped to cement his family's connections to the Roman elite. But the young Caesar was not content with a life of leisure and luxury. Instead, he wanted to make his own mark on the world. At the age of 25, Caesar left Rome to take part in the lucrative and prestigious business of Roman land speculation. Land speculation was a common way for wealthy Romans to invest their money and gain even more wealth. It involved purchasing large tracts of land, usually in newly conquered provinces, and then reselling them for a profit. Caesar traveled to Spain, Gaul, and other parts of the Roman Empire, acquiring vast amounts of land and making a fortune in the process. But Caesar was not just interested in making money, he was also interested in politics. In 75 BC, Caesar ran for the prestigious office of quaestor, which involved managing the finances of the Roman state. While this position was traditionally held by patricians, or members of the Roman aristocracy, Caesar's wealth and connections allowed him to campaign successfully and win the election. This marked the beginning of Caesar's political career and set the stage for his rise to power. After serving as a quaestor, Caesar went on to hold other important political offices, including a tribune, praetor, and consul. Each position gave him more experience in Roman politics and helped to build his reputation as a skilled administrator and leader. But it was during his time as consul in 60 BC that Caesar formed one of the most famous political alliances in Roman history, the First Triumvirate. This alliance was a partnership between Caesar, Pompey, and Crassus, three of the most powerful men in Rome. Together, they controlled much of the Roman government and used their power to advance their own interests and those of their allies. Caesar's rise to power was not without its enemies. As his influence grew, so did the number of people who wanted to see him brought down. In 58 BC, Caesar was appointed governor of the province of Gaul, which encompassed much of modern-day France and Belgium. The position gave him control over a vast and unruly territory, and Caesar spent the next 5 years campaigning against various tribes and consolidating Roman control over the region. During his time in Gaul, Caesar wrote a series of letters to a friend in Rome describing his military campaigns and the challenges he faced. These letters, known as the Gallic Wars, are considered to be one of the earliest examples of new journalism, a style of writing that emphasizes action, drama, and colorful characters. The Gallic Wars were a huge success and made Caesar a war hero. When he returned to Rome in 49 BC, Caesar had defeated many of Rome's enemies and had expanded the empire's borders. He had also acquired vast amounts of wealth and had gained the support of many influential people. With his popularity at an all-time high, Caesar decided to run for the office of dictator. The dictatorship was a position of supreme power in ancient Rome, and it was typically held only in times of crisis. But Caesar's supporters argued that he was the right man for the job. They believed that he could solve Rome's many problems and lead the city to a new era of prosperity and greatness. However, Caesar's opponents saw the move as a power grab and were determined to stop him. Led by a man named Marcus Junius Brutus, Caesar's enemies formed a conspiracy and plotted to assassinate Caesar. On the morning of March 15, 44 BC, Caesar arrived at the Senate House and was greeted by a group of conspirators. One of them, a man named Cassius, approached Caesar and plunged a dagger into his chest. Caesar was stabbed multiple times by other conspirators. As he tried to defend himself, he was ultimately killed, and his body was thrown into the nearby river Tiber. In the aftermath of Caesar's assassination, the conspirators hoped that they had saved the Roman Republic from tyranny, but they had failed to consider the consequences of their actions. Caesar's death led to a period of civil war and instability, and the conspirators themselves were eventually executed. One of Caesar's close friends and allies, a man named Mark Antony, emerged as a key player in the conflict, along with Caesar's adopted son Octavian. Antony led the forces that ultimately triumphed in the Civil War and established the Roman Empire. Despite his untimely death, Julius Caesar's legacy lived on. He is remembered as one of the greatest leaders in ancient Rome's history, and his achievements and failures have been studied for centuries. Some view him as a brilliant military strategist and statesman, while others see him as a ruthless dictator who craved absolute power. Ultimately, Julius Caesar's story is a reminder of the complexities of history and the enduring legacy of one of the most fascinating figures in human history. Now that you know the basics of Julius Caesar's life and legacy, let's take a deeper look at some of the most interesting aspects of his story. As we mentioned earlier, Julius Caesar was a brilliant military strategist and one of the most successful generals in ancient Rome's history. He was known for his daring tactics and his ability to inspire his troops to victory. One of Caesar's most famous battles was the Battle of Alesia, which took place in 52 BC during Caesar's campaign in Gaul. The battle was a siege of the Gallic town of Alesia, which was defended by a massive army led by the chieftain Vercingetorix. Caesar and his troops besieged the town, but they were unable to capture it. So Caesar built a second fortified camp around the town. Then, when Vercingetorix and his army attempted to relieve the siege, Caesar's troops were able to defeat them in battle and capture the town. The Battle of Alesia is considered to be one of the greatest military victories in ancient history and is still studied by military academies today. Another interesting aspect of Caesar's life was his relationship with the Roman Senate. The Senate was the most powerful governing body in ancient Rome and was composed of elder statesmen who were supposed to represent the interests of the Roman people. But Caesar was never really on good terms with the Senate. They saw him as a threat to their power and were suspicious of his growing popularity. The Senate's opposition to Caesar was one of the main factors that led to his assassination in 44 BC. One of the most well-known facts about Julius Caesar is that he was assassinated. The details of the conspiracy and the assassination itself have been the subject of countless books, plays, and films. But the true story is just as fascinating as any fictional version. The conspirators who murdered Caesar belonged to the Roman aristocracy, and they feared that Caesar was becoming too powerful and was threatening their way of life. They also believed that Caesar was a tyrant, and that he was abusing his power to enrich himself and his allies. The assassination took place on the Ides of March, which is now known as the date of March 15th. According to legend, when Caesar was informed of the plot against his life, he replied, "Beware the Ides of March." On the day of the assassination, Caesar was surrounded by his close friends and allies, including Marcus Junius Brutus, who would later become one of the conspirators. Brutus and the other conspirators were able to convince Caesar to come to the Senate House, where they attacked and killed him. Caesar's body was then thrown into the river Tiber. Finally, let's talk about Caesar's legacy. We mentioned earlier, Caesar is one of the most well-known figures in ancient history. His name has become synonymous with power, and his life and death have been celebrated in art, literature, and film. But Caesar's legacy is a complicated one. Supporters of Caesar view him as a champion of the common people and a great leader who helped to transform Rome into an empire. His detractors, on the other hand, see him as a ruthless dictator who craved power and was willing to do anything to get it. Ultimately, Julius Caesar's legacy is a reminder of the complexities of history and the enduring fascination with one of the most powerful men in ancient Rome. We hope that you enjoyed learning more about Julius Caesar, one of the most legendary figures in human history. If you want to learn more about ancient Rome or other historical figures, be sure to stay tuned for more content. Thanks for watching.